Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery who I only kind of reintroduced you to a couple of weeks back, and I was very impressed with the last beer that I had from them, so I'm hoping that this one turns out to be another really good beer, particularly considering that it's at the opposite end of the spectrum from the last one that I had. So for this review then we are going to go to Stockholm, the capital city, and we're having a look at another beer from the oldest of the craft breweries that you're going to find there. So this one comes to you from Pang Pang Brewery. It's called the Chocolate Cherry Cream Pie Stout. It comes in at 10% ABV, and I guess in terms of style you can consider this one as an Imperial pastry stout or an Imperial sweet stout, whatever takes your fancy. But yeah, this one I think will be a very, very nice beer. A couple of weeks back I reviewed the Gang Gang, which was a New England sort of hazy style IPA, which turned out very, very nicely. But the first ever beer that I had from this brewery was a cookie stout. I'm sure it was called the Cookie Monster Stout or something like that. So in the early days, they had a really good knack for brewing these kind of sweet Imperial stouts. So hopefully over time that is something that's progressed a little bit, and this beer turns out to be even better than the original one that I had. But very curious to see how this one turns out. Like I said, it's at completely the opposite end of the style spectrum compared to the Gang Gang that I had a few weeks back, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. I definitely need to keep an eye on Pang Pang over the next while and see what they're releasing. So you will see more Pang Pang reviews coming over 2020. Keep an eye out for that. But yeah, this beer was released on the 1st of April 2020 through the local and small scale leagued assortment. I think it was like 80 crowns this one. It was one of the more pricey ones that I bought, but I kind of thought, you know, I enjoyed the other Pang Pang one and this just sounded very, very interesting. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Pang Pang before. No doubt you will see some more at some point in the near future, because they do seem to be releasing their beers every month actually. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. But anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Pang Pang then. So Pang Pang are actually based in an old brewery building in Hökarängen in Stockholm, and this company was founded by Fredrik Tunedal back in 2011, which makes it the oldest of the craft breweries that you're going to find in the city of Stockholm. So he'd been involved in the restaurant business for a number of years before he's decided to start brewing beer for himself professionally. He'd been a kind of avid home brewer for a number of years from what I gather too. But he started off using only about 50,000 Swedish kroners of his own money, so that is roughly about £4,000. And about 5,000 euros for those of you watching in other places. But he started off with this amount of money when he was 25 years old, and he built a lot of his original brewing equipment himself using old dairy tanks, and the beers were originally brewed in small 750 litre batches, and in the early days they mainly went to local restaurants, but they're now quite widely available in Systembolaget through the order system. I think they're available nationwide basically. But in July of 2015 Fredrik also began some experimentation with distillation, and by 2018 the production capacity of this brewery was around 75,000 litres of beer per year. I haven't been able to find a more kind of up-to-date figure than that. There's not all that much information available on this brewery besides what I've just told you, but as of April 2020 when I'm filming this review for you, according to Untappd they've produced around 90 different types of beer, and if you go on the Systembolaget website you can order about 5 or so different ones. So I think I need to have a little look at the Boy Juice. I think that would be a very interesting beer to have a look at for my next review, unless they've got something really wacky or whatever coming out on the 1st of May. So we'll need to see how that plays out. But yeah, a really interesting little brewery this one. As I said, I first encountered this brewery back in like 2016 or so, maybe 2017. I think 2016 was when I first encountered these guys, and it was you know, it was the cookie stout was the first one that I tried from them, which was really, really interesting. So yeah, a really interesting brewery, this one. They're starting to get a little bit more prolific in putting beers out there. I think they've upgraded their capacity and things at the brewery, so definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. And it's kind of strange actually that the oldest of the craft breweries in Stockholm is still relatively unknown compared to some of the other breweries that you're going to find in Sweden, but yeah, definitely a brewery that you want to check out actually. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Pang Pang Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's have a little look at this beer then and see how we get on. You can take a little quick look at the artwork before we open this one up. So as I've told you previously, the name of this brewery, Pang Pang, it's basically, if you translate it into English, it's the same as saying bang bang, like a gun. You know, the Swedes say pang pang, whereas we would say bang bang. You can see that on the brewery symbol there. Just checking, you can see that on the camera. Pang Pang Brewery, the kind of fake gun. It's almost like the Mr. Bean gun that I remember Mr. Bean in the Bean the movie, when the airport thing where he's pretending to take his finger gun out of his pocket actually. But yeah, all of the Pang Pang beers tend to have that little hand artwork on them. I have to admit, I do really appreciate the artwork that these guys have. This one is very, very nice. So yeah, this one, as I said to you, the chocolate cherry cream pie stout, coming in at 10% ABV, an Imperial pastry stout that should be really quite nice actually. So without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 440 millilitres, this one 44 centilitres, whatever you want to call it, an Imperial pastry stout from Hookeringen in Stockholm. So yeah, let's see what this beer has in store for us. As I mentioned to you earlier, this one was released on the 1st of April 2020 through the local and småskaligt assortment in Systembolaget, and hopefully it turns out to be very, very nice. So yeah, let's see how we get on then. So as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial stout, this one's poured a lovely dark kind of ebony rosewood colour. You can see there's a solid half finger of a frothy kind of medium beige head on this one. That's fading away to be a very thin foamy layer. That head will not last for all that long. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, quite a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but you know, overall it does look pretty nice actually. If you shine the light through this, you can see it's a really kind of, it actually has quite a bit of ruby colour to it, in fairness. There's a bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max sort of edge to it, so it really has that kind of Coca-Cola colour, but with the light coming through it, it really is quite dark and ruby, which is quite nice. I like how this one comes across, but definitely not as hazy and sort of milky as you'll get from some of the other pastry stouts that are out there on the market. Usually those are very, very kind of thick, creamy and hazy, but not in the case of this one. I like how this goes together. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then, and just see how we got on. Nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what colour it is, or what style it is, sorry, but the one thing that is surprising is that it's not quite as hazy as some of the big Imperial pastry stouts that you're going to come across. But I'll say straight away, when you have this beer out of the can, you definitely get that big kind of lactosey, almost milkshakey type quality coming out of this one. So let's have a look at that aroma then and see how we get on. Oh yeah, that's really nice. I mean, straight away with this one, it's got a lovely kind of vanilla lactosey base to it. You can definitely smell that kind of roasty, chocolatey base to the beer as well, but the lactose really smoothens that out. There's a good bit of a kind of high percentage cocoa chocolate to this beer. So yeah, nice kind of, it's really got that, you know, that sort of 70-80ish% cocoa chocolate to it. You can really get that out of the beer, but at the same time the lactose really smoothens it out and you start to get a sort of 30 or 40% cocoa coming out of the beer, which is really interesting. So yeah, lots of nice milky vanilla type notes out of the beer. It really does smell a little bit like a kind of brownie or a kladkake. I can never pronounce that word, kladkake. the Swedish chocolate cake basically, which is almost the kind of same consistency as an American brownie or something like that. Swedes will probably call me, that would be heresy to say that, but the Swedish Kladdkaka, it is pretty much the same consistency as a big American brownie, to be honest with you. You do get that big chocolate cakey brownie type quality out of this one. There's some nice brown sugars in here, sort of a treacly molasses sort of thing. You do get some of the sweeter caramel out of it, but yeah, you've got a big kind of treacly molasses kind of thing to this beer, which is very, very nice. So yeah, the malt base in this one really comes in layers. Like I say, you've got that darker chocolate, you've got the milky chocolate on top of that, the lactosey notes in there, a little bit of a vanilla, the kind of brown sugary notes, a sort of treacly molasses type quality to the beer, which is really interesting. And it's almost a little bit toasty and biscuity on the back end. It's like if you smell the kind of burnt edge of a brownie, or the top of a brownie, which is really nice. But yeah, I really like the lactosey, vanilla, milky kind of edge that the beer has too. On top of that, there is quite a bit of a red fruity character coming out of this one. It's got a little bit of a sharp kind of raisiny quality to it. You can definitely smell the juiciness and the slight tartness from the cherries as well, which is interesting. But the further you go into the aftertaste with this beer, you do start to get some of those blackcurranty, blackberry type notes out of the beer. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is, like a Northern Brewer or Bramling's Cross or something like that in this beer. Cascade, of course, would be a good option, or even some Simcoe. I'd be curious to know what hops they've used in this beer, because it's got some lovely red fruity characters, and it's not quite as simple as it being cherry. You do get some of the cherry in there, and I wonder how much of this beer will have been done using the flavour essence, because this is quite a popular technique now with these big pastry stouts, is to use some flavour essence and then put a kind of oaty, creamy malt base into it and then put the flavour essence on top. But yeah, some of the juicy fruity notes out of this are nice. Like I say, a little bit of a raisiny sharpness, some cherry tartness to it as well, in fairness, a little bit of a juicier figgy note, and then some black currants and blackberry notes coming out of this beer as well, the more that you smell of it. So yeah, overall, I'd say this beer has a good balance between the sharper fruits, the kind of chocolatey and caramelly malts. There's not really a hoppy character to this one, maybe a little bit of grassiness, a little bit of earthiness, but really not very much in the way of hoppy character when it comes to this beer. So yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this now and just see how we go on. This one is the Chocolate Cherry Cream Pie, a 10% pastry stout, Imperial sweet stout, whatever you want to call it, from Pang Pang Brewery in the Hukarängen area in Stockholm here in Sweden, released on the 1st of April 2020 through Systembolaget here. Really curious about this. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. That's nice, actually. It's got a lovely sweetness to it, and it's actually at the same time, it's not the biggest and most oily of stouts that you're going to come across, but it really does. It's interesting. The thing that's interesting about this is just how it retains its flavour, and also the fact that it does have that slightly lighter mouthfeel. I mean, the big stouts that you're going to have in Sweden just now, it will be the Omnipolos, and it's going to be the Grand series from Dugges. Those are the kind of big beasts on the market at the moment, and this one certainly would not look out of place next to those in terms of its flavour profile. The thing that sets this one apart a little bit, like I say, on first impression, is that the mouthfeel is just a wee bit lighter. But I will say straight away, this beer, it does get a nice thumbs up from me. I like how this goes together, actually. So I definitely need to keep an eye on what Pang Pang are doing, because these guys are doing sours, they're doing IPAs now, and then they're doing a few of the big kind of stouts like this. So I think I need one of the sours is probably the next port of call for this brewery. And the list of different beers they like I said, they've got 90 or so different beers that they've done so far. There's a good bunch of sours in there, there's a good bunch of IPAs, and I think the sweet stouts, they used to do quite a bit of sweet stouts, but in recent times it's been more of the kind of, it's been more of the the kind of the IPAs and the fruit beers and sour beers and stuff that they've been doing. But this is really, really good. This, as I say, doesn't look out of place next to the Omnipoyos and the you know, and the Amundsens and the Dugas and things that are out there now in Scandinavia. This is a really nice beer, so big thumbs up to Pang Pang for this. So yeah, the question would be, is it worth the £80? I think so. It's a treat beer, this, definitely. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one then, and see how we get on. So yeah, underneath this you can definitely feel that sort of roasty, toasty, black malty quality. You can feel this beer just sort of dry out a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, and you will feel that black malty quality to this one. But in fairness, the lactosey notes that you're getting from this beer sits on top of that and really smoothens it out, but you really can feel the centre of your palate just sort of dry out a little bit, which is really interesting. In the centre of your palate too, you get those big heavy kind of chocolatey notes, and the chocolate almost comes across as being a little bit charred in some ways, but at the same time it's got that sort of 80-90% cocoa quality to it. You know, it gives you that really dark flavour, and it also gives you a wee bit of that red fruity kind of note that you sometimes get from these big cocoa notes as well. But as you go further in towards the centre of the palate, you start to get a little bit more sweetness out of it. A kind of, you know, it starts to gradually become sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, and then you know, it sort of goes down to about sort of 50-60% cocoa chocolate, maybe even a little bit milky, and then you get the lactosey notes there. As you move further forward on the palate, you start to get the more milky chocolatey notes out of this beer, which is really interesting. If you go to the front corners of your palate and move in a little bit, there's a few woody undertones in there as well, but then the further you go into the aftertaste, I do find that the middle of the palate kind of dries out a little bit, and you get the lactosey sweetness in there. You get a little bit of the kind of oaty creaminess out of this one as well, which is great. But yeah, in terms of a kind of pastry stout, I found this one very light in its mouthfeel, but that doesn't really hinder it in any way. The way that the chocolatey notes comes out in this one is great. As you move further forward on the palate, you can definitely feel a little bit of a kind of oaty creaminess out of this, and the lactosey notes are sitting in there. It almost gives you a little bit of a kind of vanilla hint, which is interesting. But you do definitely get that sweetness, and as you go, if you go to the centre of the palate, as I say, you've got that sweet kind of caramelly note to this one. As you move further out from that and towards the edge of the palate, it gets a little bit more biscuity, but then if you move directly forward, you will pick up a few kind of nutty qualities to this beer as well, which is really quite nice. I mean, I really like how this one goes together. The thing that's surprising for me is how they can get such a big flavour out of this, and it does give you these really kind of cakey notes, but it's just not quite as thick, to be honest with you. That's the main kind of thing that you're going to say about this beer. It's got a lovely flavour to it and everything you'd expect, but the mouthfeel just is not as thick as you'd normally expect for a pastry stout. But as I say, that shouldn't be viewed as a bad thing. I think that in some ways can be viewed in quite a good way, but at 10%, you know, it does make the beer a little bit stupidly drinkable. So probably you want to share this one with somebody rather than drinking it yourself. Says me who's drinking this one on a Monday evening before I get my day off tomorrow, which is nice. But yeah, this really is a very, very nicely done beer. On the hoppy side of things then, let's look at the hoppy side of the beer. A little bit of darker earthiness in the back corners of the palate. As you come further forward, it does spread forward a wee bit. You get a little touch of a floral aromaticity on the front corners of the tongue, then round the very front curve of the palate it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, and then behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And for me, I do wonder if there is just a little bit of Bramling's Cross or Northern Brewer in this one. William Met, of course, would be the other option from America. The hoppy side of the fruits isn't too complex in this. But yeah, you've got, the further you go into the aftertaste, you get a little bit of that black curranty, blackberry sort of thing out of it, but in the beginning it's really got a little bit of a kind of juicy figgy quality to it. You've also got a wee bit of a you really have a little bit of a you've almost got a little bit of tartness to it in the beginning, but I think the cherries that are in here, I think that it's flavour essence. I'm pretty sure it's a bit of flavour essence that's been added to this, because it does come across as quite candied. You can feel just behind the very front edge of your tongue that it's got a little bit of that kind of the cherry notes that come out of this are very sort of candied. So the front part of your palate really feels quite juicy and figgy. The further you go into the aftertaste, that remains figgy, and then you start to get these blackcurranty and blackberry kind of complexities to it. So, but the cherry flavours for me are generally quite figgy almost. I think that the hoppy side of the beer, the fruity side of this beer, is quite figgy, and the cherry notes are a little bit more sort of candied and flavour essency. But in terms of what it says it's going to be, a chocolate cherry cream pie, I don't know about you do get a little bit of that kind of pastry-ish note out of it. That comes out. The further you go into the aftertaste, this beer really does dry out, and you do get a wee bit of that kind of pastry pie sort of thing. But it's almost just like a kind of, it really strikes me as more of a kind of brownie, this one, rather than anything else, a kladdkaka kind of beer. This one, Swedish chocolate cake, it's really got that to it, and you will notice that the very middle of your palate dries out and gets very, very dark the further you go into the aftertaste too. But it's got a lovely degree of sweetness to it. You do get that creamy note from the sort of lactosey and vanilla flavours towards the front of the palate as well, the juicy fruits, and also the kind of roasty toasty note with this one as well. But I mean, overall, what I will say, this is just a very, very nice beer, and I'm just surprised you can get so much flavour, and you can get it's kind of comprehensive a flavour out of a beer that is so light in its kind of mouthfeel, if you like. So on that note, let's move on to the last part of the review, the mouthfeel. So yeah, I think it's fair to describe this beer as being at the top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. For a stout, it really feels quite light for me. The carbonation is really quite smooth. The mouthfeel overall, it has a really lovely kind of cleanliness to it. It's wet, but at the same time it's got a little bit of oiliness to it. It's nowhere near as kind of thick and gloopy as one of these beers from for example, the Dugas Grand Series, or some of these things you'll get from Omnipollo. But that, as I said, really does not hinder it in any way at all. That does not affect the flavour. So that's another very interesting point to make about this beer. As I say, the slightly lighter mouthfeel does not hinder it by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, keep that in mind when you try this beer. In terms of the kind of hoppy bitterness and things like that of this one, I would say this one I think might be around the sort of 50-ish, 40 or 50-ish IBU mark. You do get a little bit of a roasty toasty quality to it. You get a little bit of a you do get a really kind of roasty black malty type quality there underneath it, but on top of that you start to get these thicker, smoother, kind of sweeter qualities out of the beer as well, which is very, very nice. And I like how that goes together in this one. So this beer really does dry out the further you go into the palate. The bitterness is coming from both the malt base and from the hoppy side of things in my mind, but the hops are not too prominent. You do get a good degree of sweetness to this one, particularly in the beginning, a good degree of smoothness as well, and a lovely kind of sweet quality to this. But the fruitiness, it has a little bit of sharpness in the beginning, which is great, and then it just gradually develops to become a little bit more juicy the further you go into the aftertaste as well. But overall, this is just another very, very nice sweet kind of sweet pastry type stout. I'm just surprised at how light the mouthfeel is, and how good it can still turn out on the basis of that light mouthfeel as well. So big thumbs up to Pang Pang Brewery here for this one. This is a very, very nice beer, and try this one when you get the chance. It is a little bit more pricey in fairness, but share it with a friend and enjoy something a little bit more unique actually. So yeah, big thumbs up to the guys at Pang Fang for this. I think they've pulled off a solid beer here, and it's definitely worth trying. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this review then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pang Pang Brewery as well. No doubt we will return to these guys at some point over the next few months, because they seem to be a little bit more prolific these days. But thank you again for watching, and check out my social media. I will catch you guys very soon. This one is the chocolate cherry cream pie and Imperial pastry stout, coming in at 10% ABV, and it turned out really pretty damn nicely, I have to say. Check out this one while you still get the chance. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Make sure you have a little look at Pang Pang Brewery from Hukarengen in Stockholm here in Sweden. Cheers.